So I've been planning on making a change to the channel. Like I'm thinking of a new direction for the videos that I'm going to be posting, and they're mostly going to be on a philosophical, spiritual angle. And one of the first things that came to my mind that kind of popped up was, why would anyone listen to me, right? Because I'm just a random guy on the internet and there's no real reason for why anyone should listen to what I have to say. So I just thought about sharing my own spiritual journey so that you kind of have context as to where I'm speaking from. So the honest answer is I have been on this journey for the past 14 years. I have studied various disciplines like Upanayanam, the Vedas, Bhagavad Gita, Vedanta, yoga, Jyotisha. These are all different paths that I've pursued. The most important thing that you should know is that I've been consistent on my personal spiritual practice for the past 14 years. Like I've been doing it every single day without a break, more or less. That was a summary of my personal spiritual journey, and I'd like to share a little more in depth about the entire thing that I've been through. And this is mostly because I've had quite the interesting journey personally, and I think it's time for me to come down from my metaphorical cave in the Himalayas and start sharing my insights with the rest of the people. Right? Okay. So my journey began in 2012, specifically June 10th, 2012. There's this process called the Upanayanam or the Brahma Upadesham, where a person is initiated into a specific mantra, and that's why my journey began. Now I just want you to know that before this I was actually an atheist. For a really long time I didn't believe in God, and I was against all of this. The reason that I decided to get into this specifically was because it was actually one of my dad's final wishes. You know, he wished that I would also become a Brahmin and learn the Vedas and all of that. And when my mom initially suggested this idea to me, I thought about it for a moment and I decided, I was like, yeah, okay, fine, it's my dad's final wishes, so might as well, right? That was the whole logic behind it. I didn't know how much it would change my life after that. And I'm kind of glad that I took the risk and I decided to do this. Now the other thing was that my astrologer, my family astrologer, had actually spoken about this to my mom as well. He had recommended that I undergo the entire process, and it was only much later that my mom actually floated this idea to me. And like I said, like when the idea was floated, I thought about it for a moment. I asked like what it would entail, and they said that would mean certain responsibilities. I had to do certain things for the rest of my life and so on and so forth. I thought about it, I said yes, and that's how I ended up here. So yeah, the Brahma Upadesham happened. There were 2 days of ceremonies, and at the end of it I was initiated into this path and my journey began. For a really long time I just continued chanting the mantra. Like I didn't really know about the specifics, I didn't know what to do, but I kept doing the basics. I kept chanting the mantra, and eventually things started to change. Now I was given help at certain stages by certain people. Like one of the people that helped me a lot, who gave me an entire structure into this particular spiritual practice, was Vachatbhuvananda Swamiji. He's basically my mentor. He's been one of my guides for a really long time, and he's still kind of my guide even today. As my practice continued, I ended up quitting a lot of the habits that were a huge part of my character until that point. And I'm not going to go into it, but what happened after that was that I ended up getting a lot of experiences. Thankfully, I didn't get caught up on the experiences themselves. I just kept continuing my practice, and a lot of things internally ended up changing. One of the things that happened was that I ended up developing a huge and deep relationship with my Ishta Devata, who is Shiva, even today, right? And all of this, the groundwork was laid in my spiritual practice that started in 2012. I just started chanting with no faith, honestly. Like initially it was just a mechanical process. I just concentrated on the process of chanting the mantra. I tried to understand what the mantra meant, and since it meant something good, it was just like, further my intellect. So I kept going on with it. And now, sometime in 2015, I was introduced to other mantras. I was also initiated into Sri Vidya. I didn't know how deep Sri Vidya was back then. I understand it now. But I didn't start those practices back then, mostly because I didn't understand the significance of all that I was getting. But at the same time, I was also taught how to do Devata Upasana. Like I was taught the Panchopachara Puja, I was taught the Shodashopachara Puja. I was also taught the specifics of Agnihotra, the fire ritual. All of this was a huge marker. Like I at one point I did Agnihotram almost on a daily basis, right? This was a little before my MBA began. And like I said, all of this was taught to me by Swami Vachatbhuvananda Saraswati, and it kind of laid the groundwork. My MBA happened, I kept continuing my practice, and things got deeper, but everything kind of exploded after 2018. Now, the agreement that I had with my mother was that I would do an MBA, and as a result, I would get a little time to go deep into spirituality after that. And my MBA was done. I graduated with a really good set of marks. So I was allowed to pursue spirituality. Now, the first thing that I did was study Parayanam, and at the same time, I chose to delve into Jyotisha. Now, the thing was, at a certain point, sometime in 2016, just before I began my MBA, I had an interesting experience with a person, with a Jyotishya, and that led to me becoming interested. I remember specifically at the end of the session, he asked me if I had any doubts. I didn't have any doubts about my future or what I would do and all of that. But I was extremely curious about how he did what he did and how I could get to that specific, like how I could get to where he was, like how he did what he did and how I could do that as well. And I remember his answer. He said, like, lot of sadhana is necessary from a young age. And I decided to get deeper in my sadhana as a result. Now, sometime in 2018, I started studying at Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan in Mysore, which was where I learned all of my Jyotisha. I also did a lot of self-study on my own. Like I said, I was also getting into Veda Parayana. I studied how to chant the Purusha Suktam, the Shri Suktam. We did the Udaga Shanti. We did Taittiriya Upanishad. And after I left studying with the teacher over there, I also learned other things with Swami Vachatbhuvananda Saraswati. He taught me how to do. We went all the way up to the Sri Rudram, which concluded quite recently. In a way, all of this was probably cleansing my karma and giving me a certain amount of punya, because towards the end of 2019, I ended up meeting my teacher for Atma Vidya, Srinivasanji. I still remember the first conversation I had with him. I was so full of confusion, so full of doubt. I had all of these various ideas. And at the end of the conversation, it had felt like a load had been lifted from my shoulders. Like I was carrying something really heavy, and I felt incredibly light after the conversation. Like I had just dropped all of that. And I've mentioned this in my podcast as well, like the most recent episode 61. And when I mentioned this to Jayakumarji, if you've been listening to the podcast, you would know that Jayakumarji is a person who is also part of the same group as Srinivasanji. Not just pointing fingers, listen to the podcast if you want. Anyway, getting back to the story. Jayakumarji mentioned that he had the exact same experience when he met his teacher, who is like, the Paramaguru, who's part Swami Dayanand Saraswati ji, right? So what happened after that was I ended up studying the Bhagavad Gita. Over the course of 2 years, we delved into chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita, which is basically the crux of the entire Bhagavad Gita. Like it talks about Atma Vidya, Sankhya Yoga. And at the same time, we also studied different things. We got into the Katha Upanishad. We got a little into the Katha Upanishad. We also studied Tattvamasi, the Mahavakyam. And after a certain point of time, I was unable to continue, mostly because I got too involved with work and life got in the way. But sometime in 2023, I also started my journey with asana, I started studying yoga. So what happened was I met this person called Shrikar through a mutual friend, and through a series of fortunate events, I ended up studying yoga in Gokulam, Mysore, which was an interesting journey because it culminated with me meeting Prasadji, who's this amazing yoga teacher, and I've spoken about him multiple times on podcasts and different videos before. What happened was I ended up attending this boot camp called the Abhyasa boot camp, and at that point of time what happened was I had all of these different paths, like I had all these margas, I had information from so many margas that was kind of causing me a great deal of confusion. And this boot camp with Prasadji completely cleared all of those confusions. I understood that yoga wasn't just asana, it wasn't just a series of physical movements. I understood that it was the bedrock of all spiritual practice. So that kind of like tied a neat little bow. It solidified all of my understanding into this neat compartment that I had. And I had this neat structure for all of the knowledge that I had prior to that. Moving on to my current practice, I primarily practice mantra japa, and the reason is found in this verse in the Bhagavad Gita where Krishna speaks about different things, and he says, among all of the speaking about my specific practice, I'm not going to get into details, but I'm just going to let you know that it contains mantra japa. I have been initiated into multiple mantras, and I'm just chanting a few of them at the moment. And the reason for this is actually found in chapter 10 verse 25 of the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna declares Yajna Nam Japa Yajnosmi. Among all of the different spiritual practices, I am Japa. And this is used as a metaphor to say that Japa is one of the best spiritual practices. So I'm not going to be telling you which mantras we've been initiated into, that would be not wise, but I will just say that I've been initiated into multiple and I'm chanting, and eventually I hope to pass on this knowledge to worthy students. I'm also trying to get back into learning the Bhagavad Gita. I'm going to be rejoining Srinivasanji's classes. I want to start chanting the Rudram again because I have a lot more time, because if you've been watching my videos, you know that I've been recently unemployed. So yeah, I also plan on studying Jyotisha again eventually. I also just want to share that I had this huge conflict of whether I should become a sannyasi or whether I should get married, and I spoke to my teachers about it, and there's an entire podcast related to that particular thing. So check out that particular podcast. It's episode 61, Sannyasi or Millionaire. Okay. So that's about it. I want to say thank you. Subscribe, check out my videos. I will see you in the next one. Bye.